Hello, my name is Brian. Coming on here because I want to try to uh, speak about my personal mental health issues that I'm dealing with. Just before the pandemic um, was announced and the world became so completely scary and strange, um, I started exhibiting signs of a little bit of mental issues. Um, Basically, when I would go to work, I would uh, have, um, I'd get to work, spend most of my day um, doing what I needed to do, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I'd have this anxiety attack where I couldn't, um, I couldn't breathe, couldn't walk. I was in full fledged um, fear, um, one of the fight or flight, um, and or um, one of those uh, spots in dealing with uh, what was going on at the time. Um, and I felt like I was literally um, frozen and scared. And I had no reason to be scared at the moment. At least that's what I thought. And um, I tried to keep a level head about it, but unfortunately, because it was so traumatizing and scary, I felt that I needed to basically I needed to ask to go home early, because it was literally getting to the point where I was unable to continue to work. Oh, pardon me. And it was very, very devastating to me because I had spent nearly, at the time, 20 years working at Walmart, working at my job, and I enjoyed what I was doing, even though I felt like I was getting a lot of mixed signals from management where I worked, um, and I felt very confused and anxious because I wasn't sure if I was doing what was right or not. And so I was getting more and more stressed out over it. That's the beginning of why, or the issues that I was going to be saddled with um, as time went on. Pardon me again. Sorry, I'm a little tired tonight. As time went on, um, the anxiety attacks got more and more frequent, um, based upon, um, I don't know why they would occur. Sometimes they would occur in the middle of my day. Sometimes they would occur before I even got into the building. And I would literally feel very, very um, abnormally stressed out even before clocking on to start my workday. And then as time went on further, um, I couldn't predict when I was going to get an anxiety attack because sometimes I would get anxious on the way out of work. I'd be on my way. Sorry again. Ugh. you can tell I'm tired. Um, I'd be walking out, getting ready to leave the job, and as I would get closer and closer to the exit doors of the building, I would get more and more anxious and feeling trapped and uh, just totally not myself. I would get out finally out of the building and make it to my car, all the while hyperventilating, unable to catch my breath. Sorry again. Um, but anyway, I'd sit in my car and just try to figure out a way to ha- make those feelings of anxiousness go away. Well, a few months later after that started, or the pandemic started, I um, was still suffering. Um, I I was put in a position of uh, that I wasn't really all that comfortable with, where I was the person that checked everybody in, um, as they were coming in the building. They had to be temperature checked, and I had to ask them questions about whether or not they were um, uh, recently exposed um, the flu, um, to what we were all experiencing, and it was no easy task for me, and it was very paralyzing for me because I felt like I wasn't contributing enough at work. I was feeling like I was uh, causing more um, issues because I would freak out at work every once in a while and have to go home because I just was um, too affected by whatever the wherever the anxiety was coming from, and I still hadn't determined what was causing me to get so anxious and to feel so completely and utterly out of control. Well, after I had managed to, um, after I had got to the point where I could no longer work because I literally flipped out at work one day, um, and had to tell um, my immediate supervisor that I had to go home and that I couldn't be there anymore because I just was not in a good place mentally. Um, and so I ended up I basically signed a resignation letter because I was so overwhelmed with depression and anxiety that I couldn't do it anymore. I was literally in tears because I felt like my world was out of control. Well, I then once I got home, the very first call I made was to a crisis line, which then referred me to a counseling service locally in my area, and I began to go to get regular counseling, as well as being put on medication for the anxiety and depression that I was dealing with. I, to this day, am still on those said medications because of the fact that without them, I'm pretty much prone to those anxiety attacks and depression. And the one thing that's been a saving grace for me is this YouTube channel, along with another YouTube channel that I have. This one is basically my way to vent my frustrations and my um, issues that I face on a daily basis, or what have you. And it is also a place where I try to find strength and um, and hopefully guidance regarding it. Um, and I just part of me is kind of depressed that my YouTube channels don't get as many views as they should. And I see these other channels that are just like mine or very, very similar to mine that have well over 1,000 subscribers already. And I don't know if they've been doing it for as long as I have, but they seem to be able to get a lot further faster than me. And even my other channel, which I'm proud to say is now up to like just over 760 subscribers, um, has taken well over 5 years to get there. And um, I'm trudging away, continuing to put content out there, um, just because I want to see if I can't get that channel to um, finally click with somebody and or somebody's. Um, and I just wanted to say uh, thank you to those who do watch my channel, um, this one or the other one, um, because it really warms my heart to know that somebody else is willing to listen and or to maybe offer suggestions as to what I might do to make things better for me. Um, as it stands now, I'm pretty much a shut in as far as I don't get out very much anymore. I used to because um, I thought I was um, making a difference in some ways. I was walking and was getting to a point where I was feeling like I was making headway in um, the fact that I was exercising and felt good. But unfortunately, I also was dealing with um, some um, negative Nancy's around my in my life. One of my particular issues that I deal with on a daily basis is loneliness. Loneliness to me is very, very crippling. Um, I don't feel like I can trust people now after trusting, I want to say, probably four different groups of people, because the first person that I trusted basically used me for a place to live and wasn't even very supportive of what I was going through, even though I had come out to him and told him things that I should never have told him, obviously. Um, and he used it against me. Um, and every chance he got, he would make me feel like crap. Okay. So then managed to get him out of my life, only to um, invite my or put it out there that I might be willing to invite my cousin to come stay with me, um, who at the time I didn't know was suffering from her own mental issues. Unfortunately, with that came a lot of headaches and a lot of stress that I just didn't need. And it was just making my life even more and more miserable. And I eventually had to ask her to leave. And it wasn't pretty, trust me. Um, it was very, very, very ugly towards the end of our um, living arrangements. And to this day, we are not close anymore. And um, I would not ever open my home to that person again because of how I felt I was being treated. And then because I couldn't stand being alone, I invited a husband and wife to come stay with me. And mind you, this was during the time that my cousin was still living in my backyard. She had moved a trailer of sorts into my backyard, breaking down my fence and causing irreparable damage to my fence plus my backyard. And needless to say, I made yet another mistake and a misstep in inviting these people over to rent out the room that was previously occupied by my cousin. But because my cousin wasn't willing to give up the room that had um I had offered her, and had basically assumed that since she wasn't no longer living in my house but outside of it, that I would rent out the room because I needed to have some extra income, some sort of income coming into the home. Well, that lasted for a little while, and it was nice having the extra money. But unfortunately, they turned out to be um, far worse than I expected. Um, and I literally had to um, get them removed from my home on the basis of one, they were belittling me and taking me for granted. They basically made me feel like an inch tall. Um, and I found out later that they were doing illegal substances in my backyard. So then when I found that out, I got a protection order, or at least I was trying to get a protection order against them. And that is how I ended up getting them out of my home, because I told them they were no longer welcome here because they were putting me at risk and I couldn't deal with it anymore. So thankfully, they left and didn't fight me on it, because they very well could have fought me on it and said, well, we want to come back because we had um, we were unjustly blah blah blah, right? Well, thankfully they were smart enough to stay away, and they knew that whatever, if they would have come back, that it would not have been a very amicable um, living arrangements because I wouldn't be very nice, and I'm sure they wouldn't be very nice to me. So that's all well and good. But then once they moved out, I thought, well, you know what? I might try being. Um, I had met somebody via an app um, that I thought might be willing to become a caregiver because I'm physically disabled and mentally challenged in the regards that um, this my depression and my anxiety makes it very difficult for me to do a whole lot. Okay, especially when it comes to housework, and that I can do a little bit, and then I'm like overwhelmed for whatever reason. I don't know what it is, but I get easily overwhelmed with clutter, with whatever. Okay, so I ended up inviting this person that I met through the app to come stay here. And it was on the, or it was with the understanding that he would become eligible to become my caregiver. And that was also the agreement that was initially set up with the husband and wife team that was here. But because they were not um, eligible to do so, and they were just taking uh, me for granted and advantage of me, um, they ended up having to be bye-bye. Anyway, so I spent several months dealing with this person that I had staying with me from the app. And he was supposedly trying to help me make some positive changes in my life. So I started walking, and I was walking quite a while, or quite a bit, and I enjoyed it for a long time. I was very proud of my achievements, my success with going longer and longer and longer periods of or mileage or whatever, um, steps wise. And the the sad part of it was no matter what I did, if I made it a point to take a shower and take and walk for however long and come back home and get some other stuff done, I could never do enough for him to be willing to cheer me on. It was more of, well, that wasn't enough. You need to do more, blah, blah, blah. And nothing was ever enough. That really stressed me out. And we had been having some issues um, with um, each other because I wanted him to be able to move into my spare bedroom, the one that the previous tenants had moved out of. And um, initially, everything was going in that direction. However, um, he was not as willing to make the move to do those things because I think in a lot of ways he suffers from some mental issues himself. However, he wasn't willing to admit that, and he wasn't willing to um, let me help him as much as he was supposedly helping me, which in a lot of ways he wasn't helping me. He was making things worse for me. Um, Needless to say, bygones be bygones or whatever, but several weeks went by, and then because we were arguing a lot more, because I felt very much like I was not making any headway with him, as far as like um, feeling like he actually gave a crap about me enough to to show me a little bit of um, attaboys. And I know that a lot of people don't like um, to praise people because they don't think that they should have to do that. Well, he was very much so one of those people. He was someone that I could not expect anything from mentally, um, except for abuse um, and antagonization. Because a lot of times he would just sit there and um, be hostile with me. And it came down to a point where he literally lashed out at me to the point where he tried to hit me. Um, and the night before that, he um, he got within a couple of inches of my face, maybe not even a couple inches. I think we were almost nose to nose. And he says, "You want me to hurt you, don't you?" And I told him no. He was that angry and that threatening. The next day, like I said, the next day, I thought everything was gonna cool off and everything. And I went for my walk. But before I went for my walk, I went to try to talk to him, tried to, I opened the door to my garage, and that's where he was at. And I tried to communicate with him, trying to, smooth the waters over or whatever. And instead of him being even remotely willing to understand, he picks up a piece of wood um, that was sitting in the garage, like I want to say it was part of the cabinetry that he had taken out of my house, because he was working on a project. Um, anyway, he picked up one of those pieces, and for whatever reason, and I'm not saying I was completely innocent, um, I must have pissed him off because he went to swing at me with the piece of wood. And thankfully, because I had the presence of mind, I managed to get behind the door and get the door closed before he slammed the piece of wood into the door and through the door. I mean, it's got a gaping hole of um because he managed to put the piece of wood through the wooden door. Okay? I know it wasn't a very well built door, but still, he didn't have any reason to have struck out in violence like that. So, needless to say, I um, took steps to get myself away from this situation. Um, but before I left, I told him I was calling the cops and that I was going to make a report regarding the fact that he attempted to assault me. And I got a restraining order, um, and went to court multiple times because was trying to get things resolved between him and I to the point where at least I wouldn't have to deal with him anymore. But he kept not showing up for court. So, needless to say, that situation finally resolved itself, and he ended up being uh, given a 5-year restraining order. He is not to see me. I'm not to see him for 5 years. And I'm okay with that. I'm actually finally getting over that situation. However, I'm still dealing with that emotional baggage and that stress over it. I don't trust anybody outside of my home, other than my counselors at the place I go to get counseling now, because I don't know that I can trust a whole lot of people. To be um, to be honest, I've lost a lot of faith in people. There are some good people out there. As a matter of fact, I managed to reach out to a friend of mine I should say a former coworker of mine, and I consider him a friend. Um, he came over with a friend of his, and they mowed my lawn recently for me because I know I can't do it, and it was stressing me out because it was getting too tall. So he and his friend did what they could, and they got it mowed nicely. I can't believe the difference between the two. And I thanked him profusely because it was something that desperately needed done. And I know this video is stretching out to probably be the longest video I have ever put on this channel, but I think it's warranted. Um, anyway, mental um, mental illness is not something that should be discounted. People should have empathy for people who are struggling with their mental health. They shouldn't treat them like crap just because they um, are in a downward spiral, um, because they feel alone and completely at odds with the world because they don't understand why they're going through what they're going through. And I still, to this day, do not completely know why it is that all of a sudden I started getting those anxiety attacks. And so I'm hoping that there's an answer, although I've been told to not be so hell bent on getting an answer for them. The only problem with that is, how do I get past it? How do I get my life back together? And how do I get to a point where I can start making connections with people again? Because right now, as it stands, the only connection I have is with you, the viewers, and myself, because I don't get a whole lot of views on this channel. Anyway, I don't want to keep rambling. But anyway, I just wanted to say mental health is very serious, and people should realize that people who suffer from it shouldn't be ridiculed. They should be, um, people should just understand that people are going through far worse things um, than they may be doing at the moment, and they're trying really hard to make it in this world, and they can't when they're constantly bombarded by feeling less than, feeling like they are worthless, that they don't have value. And I'm here to say that I know I have value, but I still need to find a way to feel comfortable with making connections with people and for the right reasons and the good connections, not connections based on things that are not healthy for me. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this video out. Thank you for listening and watching. If you got something out of this video, please hit the thumbs up. And if you and hit the like button. And if you identify with what I'm going through a little bit, consider subscribing and we can have conversations regarding these issues and maybe we can help each other out in some way. And lastly, be good to yourself. And I'll try to do the same to myself. God bless you all. And I hope to see you in the next installment of Life with Brian.